Okay, big issue, I think, in councils, and it's something that I'm really happy to be here today to talk with you about. And I say more than happy to answer, try to answer any questions at the end of the session. I think many of you will already know me. I mean, some of you from my work as Chief Officer for the Cheshire Association of Local Councils, and others from that Handforth video. So there's no getting away from it. There's more than enough evidence to show appalling behaviour exhibited by some of our councils, although I maintain it is still a minority. So what's the issue, and has it got worse? Well, last part first. In my opinion, it has definitely got worse. Why? I don't think there's a clear answer to that. I think it's a number of factors that have come together, such as COVID. Remember that? Seems like a lifetime ago now, but it was a huge physical and emotional trauma for a lot of people, and I'm not sure that all of us have got over it yet. We've become much more inward looking as a result of the fear and isolation that many of us experienced during lockdown. And then there's the way that our sector attracts people who are attracted to a sense of power that being an elected councillor can convey. But before any councillors in the room switch off, please remember, I am talking about a very small number of people. Most of our councillors are hardworking community champions that want to do the best for their communities. However, I recently read a terrific book that gives a lot of insight into the minds of difficult people. The book is, forgive me for the title, I didn't write it, F You Very Much by Danny Wallace. And a quote that resonates for me is that feeling low status in itself leads to threatening and aversive behaviour. But add to that a little bit of power and you'll find it frees people to act on their internal states and feelings. And it's true that we see people behaving in council meetings in a way that they would never behave at home or with friends. Our sector has become more politicised over the years, and we see in the national press the aggressive and hostile behaviours of politicians, which I think in turn teaches our members that a more toxic environment is what you need in order to get things done. Although we know the opposite is true. Actually, we get nothing done in that environment but firefight the infighting. And government hasn't helped. Historically, we had a national standards board, a government quango that, grew like Topsy, but it had its advantages. It was indeed independent. It was respected. It had gravitas. So that investigations by the board were a distinct deterrent to bad behaviour. But the board was abolished and the new, lighter touch code of conduct was introduced. It most definitely saved money, which was the initial purpose for it, but it also removed the last remaining sanctions from the system intended to drive forward better behaviour. Unfortunately, what we have now puts an expensive burden on our principal authorities when it comes to investigating, and then ultimately when a breach is found, even a relatively serious one, there is nothing the monitoring officer can do to improve the situation. The guilty member can be removed from committees and advised to attend training, neither of which is likely to be viewed as a meaningful sanction by the errant member. Quite the opposite. They come back pleased as punch, full of "you can't touch me," and the complainants are left feeling abandoned and unsupported. There is plenty of code of conduct training available, and of course we encourage people to engage with it. But unfortunately, the challenging member is the one that doesn't turn up. Why would they? There's no benefit to them, as they see no reason to change their behaviour. So for the moment, we continue to encourage government to introduce sanctions for the worst offenders when they breach the code of conduct. But as yet, government doesn't seem to be minded to take any action. So what does that leave us with in the meantime? Well, it leaves us with what we can do for ourselves. One badly behaved councillor can cause massive disruption in the council. This is, of course, bad enough for the other members and officers that have to work with them, but also consider the impact it has on the council's image and reputation within the community at large. It's not good. A light bulb moment for me was when, during a mediation session prescribed by the monitoring officer, the difficult councillor, when challenged about his behaviour, responded, "I know I'm a bully. It's how I get things done." Think about that. He found out that when he behaved badly, he got what he wanted. Imagine the same principle applied to dog training. So every time the dog behaves badly, it gets a treat. In no time at all, you have a very fat, very badly behaved dog. I've seen counsellors and their officers turn themselves inside out to try to accommodate the badly behaved counsellor, who in fact bullies everyone. They try so hard to give them what they want, so they'll be left alone. But of course, that's not what happens. Having found that harassing staff, for example, gets them what they want, then of course they do it again and again. I took a moment to look up the dictionary meaning of victim, as this is often how we feel when we're faced with those difficult people. A victim is a person who feels helpless or passive in the face of misfortune or ill treatment. What I'm suggesting are ideas that take back some of the power that a truly disruptive member has taken from you, and it begins to improve the atmosphere within the council. In Cheshire, we're working on an officer-member protocol. It's not unique, I know, and ours is based on the NARC civility and respect model, which in my opinion is a bit long-winded, and we've trimmed it down a little, but the key points are still there. It is worth looking at, getting your council to adopt it or something similar, a bit like standing orders or financial regulations, which at least give you a policy document that you can refer to and an ethos that most of your council could get behind. But let me offer you an alternative way of working with that councillor. Stop putting them first. Put their request, demand, order at the back of the queue. Answer them last, not first. The officer-member protocol highlights that no one member should have special attention. If they keep sending offensive emails, why are you reading them? Respond once stating that you will not accept offensive, bullying, hateful correspondence, and after that, if you still get them, block them. I appreciate this can be harder for staff. It's harder for you as a clerk. It's not impossible though. I'm not removing councillors' rights. We're referring to a councillor, but it gets the council's agreement, because you need to get the council's agreement that the communication with staff by that challenging councillor goes through a third party. It's frustrating for the bully. Everything's going to take even longer. And if you're a member, then there's nothing in the rule book that requires you to read colleagues' emails. Block them. If the issue is social media, then as a council you can remove the need for staff to use social media. Again, have a third party post the prepared content. And if you're a councillor, don't read what the bully is posting. Block them or report them and tell other people that you don't want them to notify you of the latest post. You're definitely going cold turkey. And I think I've saved the most important one for last. Meetings set the tone from the chair. Make sure that everyone speaks through the chair as per your standing orders. And if necessary, change your standing orders to say that. And if the member won't comply, then refuse to hear them. Also, your standing orders should make reference to how disruption will be dealt with. That includes not hearing from a member, pausing the meeting briefly for the temperature to drop, or in a worst case scenario, close the meeting. The role of chair here is hugely important. Give some thought to how your council elects the chair. Not everyone has the right skill set, and it might be that not everyone gets to be chair, or it might be that a bit of support and training would help. Chairmanship training is available. Check it out. It helps the individual that is supposed to be controlling a meeting and these difficult people have the confidence in their own abilities, but also the council's procedures, in order that they feel able to enforce the meetings. And maybe there's more that we can do for ourselves so we feel a bit less powerless and a bit more powerful. We are only human, and it's tempting when we see others behaving badly and maybe benefiting from that behaviour for us to poke that bear with a little passive-aggressive behaviour of our own. How do we combat that? I find that particularly in smaller councils that there is a real resistance to acknowledging rules and procedures. We don't need all of that formality. We don't need those complicated standing orders. We just agree between ourselves. Kind of comments that I hear. Well, okay, who am I to tell you otherwise? But it's funny, when something goes wrong in a council and members no longer just agree between themselves, suddenly that rule book becomes incredibly important. And it's a race to see who gets the best interpretation the fastest. And although breaches of the code or points of order are not exactly hanging offences, they do give that challenging person, or indeed pesky member of the public, a really big stick to beat you with. Caught you out again, sapping your confidence and making you feel helpless. Your best protection from that beating is good governance. The standing orders don't have to be drafted in a way that would give War and Peace a run for its money, and they don't have to turn meetings into a format that the UN would be proud of. But they do need to be clear, and they need to be understood by everyone, and keep them up to date. I mentioned before the Civility and Respect programme being promoted by the National Association. If you've not looked at that, and clearly a lot of you have, do check it out. It's a good way of encouraging council to look inward and see how it works with councillors, works with itself, but also with other people. Your council might consider taking the Civility and Respect pledge. And then we have our own kind of internal paperwork, our agendas and our minutes. Sad to say, I think that an agenda is a really invaluable tool, and a clear and concise agenda is really valuable. It helps members prepare for the meeting, but perhaps more importantly, it helps the chair keep members on the subject in hand and stops them wandering. If we have a councillor who takes over the meeting, then the concise agenda item helps the chair bring them back to the specific subject, and then invite new contributions and politely cut off the speaker if the point's already been made several times. If the agenda is woolly, well, it may not then be lawful, and it certainly won't help the meeting run smoothly. Now, onto the P word, politics. I know we are not political creatures, and we try to ensure that party politics don't infiltrate our councils, but in reality, many of our larger councils do have that party presentation. So if you do have a party political element on your council, then use it to your advantage. There'll be a group leader, and you might well find that working with them is really helpful in managing that difficult member. They may be able to positively influence the behaviour, particularly if it's seen to be having a negative effect on the reputation or the achievement of the council in the public eye. You have training budgets, that's great. I appreciate I'm preaching to the converted in large part here, but councils do need to invest in their staff and their councillors so that they can better serve the council. Training and personal development can give them the knowledge and confidence they need to help the council weather difficulties. Been in the post a long time? Know everything? Nah. Refreshers are just that, they're refreshing. There's always something new to pick up. And sometimes it's a good reminder of why you enjoy what you do in the main. And whilst the roles sometimes get confused, and we might expect our councils or councillors to take the lead as officers, I think we have to remember that as officers, we do lead, albeit from the back. We need to help our councils and councillors with proper policies and procedure. And of course, support is available from the Scribe, your county association and the SLCC. We need to ensure contracts of employment and job descriptions are up to date, that the council has the appropriate structure. Even the small ones have staffing or employment type committees, so that there's a mechanism there to work with should anything go wrong. I'm sorry if that all sounds a bit doom and gloom. Don't forget, my job is solving your problems. You only come to me with the problems, not the things that went well. But out there's a lot of amazing work being done by a lot of great committed people. It's just unfortunate. People who disrupt meetings, the people who are difficult, often get a lot of the attention. And so in closing, I invite you to remember that there's a lot we can do working together to stamp out pockets of bad behaviour that ultimately tarnish us all.